Be yourself. Everyone else is already taken. This famous piece of advice is attributed to Oscar Wilde, a playwright and poet of the late 19th century. He was renowned for his keen wit and eccentricities which challenged the conventions of Victorian society. Wilde was born in the year 1854 in Dublin, Ireland. His parents were very interesting characters themselves. Notably, his father, Sir William Wilde, was Ireland's leading ear and eye surgeon and was also noteworthy for publishing on archaeology. Oscar Wilde's mother was a revolutionary poet and activist for Irish independence. She wrote for a paper under the pseudonym Speranza, though her true name was Lady Jane Wilde. Jane Wilde held grand salons at which the finest of Dublin's musicians and poets and professors of medicine and law and the like gathered for conversation. Throughout these events, Oscar and his brother could be present but were not allowed to speak. Therefore, Oscar learnt to listen to and perceive conversation, which may have contributed to the development of his wit. Wilde excelled in education, attending Trinity College in Dublin and then Oxford University, both on scholarship. He decorated his rooms at Oxford with objets d'art and famously quoted, "I find it harder every day to live up to my blue china." This may seem like a peculiar remark, but it is reflective of Wilde's philosophy on aesthetics. His blue china, or else porcelain, captures a perfect beauty which he desperately wishes to emulate himself. Aestheticism was, and I quote, the attitude that the sheer beauty of objects would improve one's quality of life. The philosophy may sound particularly materialistic, as if holding objects and beauty as greater than virtue. However, aestheticism places emphasis on appreciation and wonderment of the allure which a simple piece of art can possess, as opposed to a materialistic attitude, which is less concerned with beauty. Aestheticism is more about the perception of art. Living in London from 1879, Wilde became well established amongst a variety of social circles, charming many with his wit and flamboyance, his ability to keep dinner tables hanging on his every word. His style of clothing was no less eccentric than his personality, incorporating fur, velvet, cotton, linen, and all kinds of wool, a vest with wooden clasps, complete with a cape, a wide-brimmed hat, and various accessories for extra aesthetic touch. And of course, as any man with a hint of fashion should, a bow tie. His appearance was completely his own, for fashion is what one wears oneself. What is unfashionable is what other people wear. To anyone who doubts the importance of fashion, Wilde may say that looking good and dressing well is a necessity. Having a purpose in life is not. He desired nothing more than to turn himself into a work of art. The Prince of Wales declared not to know Mr. Wilde is not to be known. However, Wilde had yet to do anything of exceptional notability. "Yes, he talks well, but what has he done?" asked Helen Majeska. He had acquired fame purely by reputation, and was yet to produce any major works, so in 1880 Wilde wrote his first play, Vera, or The Nihilists. Unfortunately, he could not get the play produced. Given another year, and Oscar self-published a book of poems, poetry which was a little too reflective of the works of his inspiration. He was hence criticised for lack of originality. In January 1882, Wilde arrived in America to lecture about aesthetics. Upon arriving in New York City, a customs official asked him if he had anything to declare. Wilde replied, "The only thing I have to declare is my genius." His lecture required a few rewrites before he became a hit, and the year-long tour of America established him as a legitimate artist. In 1883, Wilde's character was changed. He now wore more conventionally fashionable upper-class clothing and paraded around Paris visiting various celebrities. Upon returning to London, he wed a young woman, Constance Lloyd, in 1884. They had 2 children, Cyril and Vivian, though a conventional life, marriage and a family, was not a fit for Wilde. He was unexplainably repulsed by his wife while she was pregnant, hinting that he was struggling with quite an abstract internal conflict. At the same time he produced many of his major works, Wilde was having an affair with Lord Alfred Douglas, affectionately nicknamed Bosie. In the final decade of his life, he had realized his sexuality, and tragically, this would lead to his undoing. Wilde's society comedies were his greatest successes. After publishing The Picture of Dorian Gray in 1890, his only novel, he continued to produce Lady Windermere's Fan, which was first performed in 1892, and The Importance of Being Earnest in 1895, among many other works. Wilde was an Irishman who had lived in London, Paris, and had toured America. His travels gave him a unique and more objective perspective of Victorian society, which allowed him to expose its hypocrisies and quirks through a satirical wit. Regrettably, Wilde was arrested and tried in 1895 after Bose's father found out about his son's relationship with Wilde. Despite testifying brilliantly, it was a hung jury. Upon retrial, he was found guilty for indecency and received a sentence of 2 years hard labour in Reading jail. Wilde could resist anything except temptation. He often spent immoderately and lavished Bosie with gifts. Whilst aesthetics hold a noble value, I believe that the unrestrained pursuit of attractiveness can lead to excessiveness and materialism. There are many stories from mythology describing beauty as a deception, and I believe life can be appreciated for more than its appearance. As for Wilde himself, I think scrutinizing his personal faults is useless, since every human being has shortcomings. He should be remembered for his genius. Any artwork that can stand for a century and still relate to an audience through humour and theme is a masterpiece. The plays and writings of Oscar Wilde will continue to amuse people for generations, for he is one of the rare kinds of artists whose works are not only beloved, but timeless.